We acknowledge the original owners of the land on which we podcast, whose stories were told for thousands of years. Today, we are recording in Meanjin. We pay our respects to elders past and present who may be listening. Sovereignty was never ceded. You're listening to What in the NDIS Now, a podcast where I, Hannah Redford, and my friend Sam Rosenbaum interview participants and providers about all things NDIS. Welcome to What in the NDIS podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Carly Anderson to talk with us today a bit about accessing the NDIS. Hello.
Hello.
How are you going?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. So, you work primarily in the mental health space.
Yes.
And so can you give us some of your top tips for filling in an access request form?
Definitely kind of writing down a list of who the people that can write supporting evidence for.
Yeah.
And getting that prepared.
How do you go with explaining getting access to doctors?
Oh. Well, you have to explain a lot, apparently. Yeah, I mean, you've got the access request form. It's pretty standard. We also use the psychosocial evidence form, so they're kind of just walking them through it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I find a lot of doctors and like psychiatrists or, a neurologist or some sort of some specialists that we often come across, don't even know what the NDIS is. And that blows my mind because I'm like, well, it's kind of been out for 10 years already. And it was talked about for many years before that. So how do you not know that this exists? Like, what sort of bubble are you living in?
No, I know exactly what you mean. I have to often explain to doctors exactly what NDIS is and what qualifies somebody for NDIS, because when it comes to mental health, there are now really specific things that qualify people to be on the NDIS, and it changes kind of all the time. As we know, their NDIS is a bit over budget, and so they're really, really tightening up what they're doing now and changing things so that it kind of excludes certain things. For instance, I used to be able to get people with BPD over the line if they've been treated quite well. That is very difficult to do now. It's mostly thought disorders under the mental health sector. It's even more tight with physical health. And I have to often describe to people, like psychiatrists and doctors, that somebody with diabetes is not going to get over the line with just diabetes. There really has to be a lot of treatment involved and like severe impairment under the medical kind of side of it.
Yeah. So part of having this podcast is because things change all the time and we're having to keep up with it, and it almost feels like you're running a race and they keep moving where the line is or the goalposts, or depending on what sport you play. They're moving it. And you don't know the rules. And you're like, hang on a second, I've been doing this for ages and I still don't know. I'm still confused.
Yeah.
So when you say thought disorders are more getting across the line, what are some of those diagnoses that you're seeing getting across the line?
Schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, sometimes BPAD if it's been treated consistently for a long period of time. Those types of things. Yeah, it's It's getting very difficult. Even with that being said, just recently I had a client who has been diagnosed with schizophrenia in the 90s, didn't make it across the line. So I had to go back over, have the doctor change a couple of things, because I think one of the things she put in there was that early interventions would make a difference with this, and clearly, being that he was diagnosed in the 90s, we're well and truly past early intervention. So I had to bring that back to the doctor and say, look, we need this changed, and this is why. I put in more evidence, so I did a letter myself instead of just the psychosocial evidence form. I also had his mom do the CARES statement, which I think made a fairly big difference. And he is now set to do his planning meeting. So
yeah. So that's an interesting point, a carer's statement.
Yes.
What sorts of things do you look for or encourage people to write in a carer's statement?
It really kind of depends, but it's mostly around what that person does for the person they care for on a daily basis, and how often it's done, and what would happen if they weren't around, because as we all know, like, people aren't around forever. So that's why we get the NDIS. So yeah, we try to look at those types of things.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good questionnaires and stuff too as well on, if you just Google CARES statement, they have like a step-by-step kind of thing. So I often bring that and just fill it in.
Ooh, that's a really good tip. I like that.
Makes my job easier.
Yeah, well, I think anything that makes it easier to apply, because it is a bit of a process. So I know when I support people to get access, you've got to start with, what is the supporting evidence we've got? Yes. What do we need to get? Yeah. Who are we going to get to fill in the access request form? Because also who fills it in makes a big difference. Yeah. Because your general GP is good as a last resort. Yeah. But the NDIS don't really like your GP. Yeah.
They more so want, specialists like psychiatrists and stuff. So my first go-to is a psychiatrist. If they have a case manager, I'll have the case manager fill something out as well. If the GP has covered their mental health at all, then I'll have the GP do a letter as well. Yeah. And those are kind of your main clinical area, so like the section A, and then you've got section B, so that's people like me who do the kind of support work, case management type things on a non-clinical side, psychologists that aren't clinical, that type of thing, CARES statements, all that. Yeah. And sometimes one of the things I've done is sort of given doctors a bit of a cheat sheet to sort of say, these are the sorts of things you need to kind of write in to the access request form. Kind of need to. I write notes on the access request form all the time, like little sticky notes. Yeah. Say, this is what this needs to say, and this is why. It seems to be, pretty helpful when it comes down to it. Yeah. Do you ever have any specialists or doctors who just go, no, I don't have time to do that? I recently had one, and it was a psychiatrist under case management kind of area who refused to do a letter because the client had autism, and that's what the main diagnosis was. And then they exited the client as well. That client ended up needing more help, and got another case manager, and the new psychiatrist said, yep, that's fine, I will do it. Yeah. I am finding OTs to be something that the NDIS is really looking at right now. They really take that into consideration. So if you can get an OT. They think the OTs are the bee's knees. Yes. So one of the things I find really hard
then with getting OT reports in particular is the cost.
Yes, so expensive.
And people with disabilities often are not working, sometimes have the disability support pension. A lot of the time they don't. And they just don't have the money for these reports.
Yeah.
And yet this is what the NDIS wants. And you can't get on the NDIS without this report, but you also can't afford to get this report.
Yeah.
And it feels sometimes like a giant puzzle that no one can quite put together. And so, like, what do you try to do in those instances?
So a couple of examples. I've had clients that are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. At6 has an OT. She's fantastic in our area. So they can access it with no cost. So if you're Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander or family of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander, you might be having access to that. The same client with autism went and got a report. It was OT style kind of report from a psychologist that was training. So that was lower cost because it was, a student with supervision put in place as well. So that was a bit lower cost. Otherwise, honestly, sometimes I just try to get them across the line and then suggest an OT so that can be, once they're on the NDIS, they can get an OT to say, this person needs this and this is why, and how, all the fun stuff that follows that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And definitely often from a support coordination perspective, that tends to be like the first thing we kind of do, because if there hasn't been an OT report previously, also they just won't be funded very well.
Yes.
And so we go, what the heck is this funding? This isn't enough funding to do anything. And so, we go and get an OT report and then put in a change of situation and get more funding. But I think getting onto the NDIS is made in the first place is made very tricky for
It is.
like good reason.
Yeah.
I think there is a good reason to restrict it a bit, but there's times when you absolutely know this person needs the support and it can be, you're like pulling your hair out going, why is it denied?
Yeah.
What is happening here? The other thing I think, like one of the things I find is the questions on the access request form trick
Yes.
or trip up
Yes, they do.
doctors who are very smart people,
Hence my sticky notes.
but also don't understand what exactly the NDIS are looking for.
Yes.
And so things like you have to say that they've exhausted all the treatment options.
Yep.
And this is as good as this person is getting.
And it's likely to be lifelong.
Yes. And you can't say that early intervention would be helpful because by the time that they've come to us, particularly in your line of work,
we've been the early intervention.
That ship has well and truly sailed. This is not early intervention time. If there had been an early intervention, potentially that would have been good. But actually, early intervention for adults kind of doesn't exist.
I know, exactly. And by the time they come to me, we're well and truly past this, and yeah.
So you mostly getting people when they've come out of hospital.
Yes. Or case managed by Queensland Health. So it's people that are living with mental health in the community, and it's to help with recidivism back into the hospital. So we're trying to keep people out of the hospital and independent as possible with their mental health.
Yeah. So when say, for example, you see someone and you can sort of tell already that maybe they're just not going to qualify for the NDIS.
Yeah.
What other avenues do you have to sort of get them support?
A go-to would be QCSS. It is a bit of a cost, but it's fairly inexpensive. And they offer usually up to 5 hours a week, depending on, what you qualify for. They come in and like help people clean their houses, or take them out to go for a coffee, do some social stuff, take them out to go grocery shopping, that type of thing. Yeah. Also, there's lots of different kind of avenues that are similar to us. We're not ongoing. We're up to a year. So we'll link them in with other places like Stride or Brook Red, like a drop-in center, kind of anything that they really kind of need at the moment. We'll just link them in with whatever services. Yeah.
That's really handy information for us in Queensland. If you're hearing this from the rest of Australia, sorry. We don't know what's happening in the rest of Australia. We're just in Queensland.
Yeah.
But that is super interesting. And I think it's really important that people do understand that part of when the government brought out the NDIS, it was still the states had to remain giving some support to people who don't qualify for the NDIS. So it's really important that you find that in your state or in your area, to find those mainstream supports, because they do exist.
Yes.
They can be hard to find.
Yes, they can be.
So tell me a little bit about you.
What would you like to know?
Where did you grow up?
I'm from Minnesota, northern Minnesota, Duluth, right on the biggest lake in the world.
That's a long way from Brisbane, Queensland. So what brought you here?
My wife lives here. So, yes.
How exciting. Love. Brings
As
most people to... Yeah. And what got you into sort of the disability mental health space?
Oh, man. Okay, so it's quite a long time ago. I've been in it for about 16 years, so... When I first got into it, my twin sister was working at a group home, and she was moving to Arizona. And so I like to joke that they traded one twin for the other. I applied, and they took me in, and I was there for, in total, over 8 years. Kind of left in between and was a corrections officer for about 7 months. Did not like not being able to help people, so went back. And then after that, I met my wife, and yeah, it's been interesting since then. I came here for 3 months. We got a civil union, and then I went back and lived with my mom in Oklahoma, and I worked at a restaurant and a child psych ward for about 4 months. And then I came back here, and I've been in community working with you.
Yep.
My first job. And, with the FAMS program, and yeah. And then I've been at my current job.
Yeah.
So community outreach since I've been here.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. It's such a variety of jobs, and I actually think that having a variety of jobs is sometimes overlooked as a really good asset for people who work in the disabilities sector.
100%.
Because you've got to have life experience and other sorts of jobs and things that you've done that you can bring to the disability sector, because the people, like everyone we work with is a human, you know, and we're all humans. And so the humans, that we work with will have loads of different experiences and people they've met in their life as well.
Exactly.
And probably lots of different jobs as well.
Yeah.
my first job was at Officeworks, and so when people talk to me about working in retail, I know exactly what that's like.
Yeah.
And it's freaking horrible.
Yes, exactly. I did things before mental health. I worked at McDonald's for way too long. And worked at a place called Menards, which is essentially Bunnings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I know about that kind of stuff as well.
Oh, nice.
Yes. It's varied quite a bit. But yes, it's big on gaining rapport with clients as well, when you can kind of relate to some of these things. And, sometimes you get a bit of respect because you've worked, in the sheriff's department and that kind of thing as well. Can people know how that is and how hard it can be? And, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been helpful, I think. And
Yeah.
behavioral, working, 8-10 years in behavioral was helpful kind of in all aspects, really.
Yeah.
It makes it very easy for me to kind of see what my clients' mood is that day and how to, relate to them in that way and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And also wrangle your many cats.
Exactly.
So how many cats exactly do you
I
have?
have 4. I only wanted 2.
But you're a sucker when
I'm a
you
sucker.
when you do fostering for cats.
Yes.
And
yes.
you can't just leave them.
I can't. The new thing is a dog. Now we're on to dogs. And
Oh no.
I haven't gotten one yet, but wanting to foster dogs apparently now.
You don't have a big enough backyard. How are you going to do that?
Said. Yeah, well, the wife, she's surrounded in it when she's volunteering. And they know she's a sucker, so that's how we end up with very sick cats all the time to foster. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a fun time, that's for sure.
Yeah. But I think it's super interesting that you do foster cats / animals. Because I think, it's also really important in this line of work to have like something else that you do.
Yeah.
Because if you focus solely on mental health or hitting your head against the brick wall of the NDIS because you can't get people through, you start to lose your mind.
Yeah. It's a bit of self-care, isn't it?
Yes.
And I always push that to everybody. Like, when you work in mental health, you need to self-care.
Yes.
Because it can be very draining.
Yes.
Yes.
And so have you got other hobbies?
I sew and like knit or that kind of thing. Yeah. Talking about getting into softball.
Softball?
Yeah, well, I used to play all the time when I was younger. Yeah. But yeah, I work with an American guy as well, and he's interested in doing softball. So now we're talking about doing that.
Interesting.
And, exercise where you can and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think exercise is good because it gets
it's massive.
Everything flowing.
Yeah, and it boosts your serotonin levels and, all the fun stuff.
Yeah, even just walking. Like, it's not like, we're not talking about heavy exercise.
No.
Just something really simple.
Go for like a 15, 20-minute walk every day. You're good to go.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything more you'd like to talk about with the NDIS?
Oh. Actually, I was bookmarking something because I was going to comment on it with the diagnosis and stuff. We are finding if people are putting PTSD as the main diagnosis and they've been treated quite extensively, that one is getting across the line as well.
I'm so glad because PTSD is
huge.
Often really misunderstood as well.
Yeah.
So that is great.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so common too.
Yeah.
And, I like to say you probably have a little bit of PTSD, at least hypervigilance from some of the jobs that I've done. But yes, it's very common, more common than people think.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much. And for coming all the way to my house to do this.
No
I
worries.
really, really appreciate it.
I had fun.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
you for listening. Please share with people you know. You can email us at whatinthendispod@gmail.com. To contact me, it's hannah@tulipcoordination.com.au. And to contact Sam, it's sam@rosenbaum.consulting. Until next time, as the Green Brothers say, don't forget to be awesome.